There are a few rules of writing that if you break them, it's one of the quickest ways to look like an amateur. Show, don't tell is one of them. It's a rule that can be pretty vague sometimes, but today we're going to clear it up. And at the end, I'm going to go over my favorite way to show, don't tell, 2 easy ways for you to do the same, and I'm going to announce the winner of the giveaway I mentioned a couple weeks ago. All this and more coming up, and we're starting right now. Hello everyone, my name is David Webb and I made this channel to give you the best tips on writing and creativity so you can finally finish your book or have that creative career you've always dreamed of. Show, don't tell is one of the most infamous rules in writing. Anton Chekhov said, "Don't tell me the moon is shining, show me the glint of light on broken glass." It is, put simply, using more personal, expressive language to put the reader into the shoes of the character, into the story. But is it really that important? Yes, and the reason why can be explained in 2 words: evocation and immersion. When you show rather than tell, you make the narrative much more readable, relatable, and enjoyable to read, and it's simply because of evocation and immersion. What are evocation and immersion? I'm sure most of you already know, but evocation is evoking a certain feeling in the reader based on your word choice, based on your language, your prose, everything. And immersion, obviously, is taking the reader and placing them in the story, making it a much more personal, real experience to the reader. Therefore, as you can imagine, the rule of show, don't tell really brings a story to life more than most other rules in writing. Telling the reader that someone is scared isn't really immersive, it isn't relatable, it doesn't evoke the same feelings as having the reader see what is going on in the character's body, what's going on in their mind. Describing their racing heart, the sweat dripping down their forehead. It evokes a very different response from the reader. And it's one of those magic ingredients that makes a story almost addictive. So yes, showing versus telling is that important. Now, in future videos, I'll be going into detail as to why too much showing versus telling is not a good thing. But if I'm being honest, I would rather have you show too much than tell too much. Because even the most uneducated reader can tell that something's off when all you're doing is telling. But at least if all you're doing is showing, it kind of looks like you know what you're doing. So for today, what I want your takeaway to be is that you do need to show. You need to be expressive in your language and not just tell readers what your characters are feeling. Now, I could go through tons of examples of showing versus telling. I could go into the theory behind it, but you can find that anywhere. And if I'm being honest, for a rule of writing that is touted as this vague and mysterious thing, it really is that simple. If you take what I've said so far and apply it in your writing, you'll find that it comes alive in a whole new way. So no, I'm not going to sit here and go over example after example. For the rest of the video, I am going to do something that will serve you so much more. This right here is what you came for. I'm going to go over my favorite way to show rather than tell, and 2 very easy ways for you to do the same right now. Now, before I go into these tips, if you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. Every week on this channel, I bring you tons of tips that will help you bring your writing to life. So if you haven't already subscribed, I don't want you to miss out. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and then the bell next to it to stay notified of all uploads. So here we go. My personal favorite method of showing versus telling is the acting technique called the magic if from Russian director Konstantin Stanislavski. It's basically the idea of what would I do if I were in this situation or if I were this character. It's not method acting by any means, but it is a very personal way of inserting yourself into the story. It requires an almost meditative level of thought, inserting yourself into the story and reacting to events around you. Obviously, this may be unrealistic for you to do every 100 words in long-form fiction, but I find that when I do, I write the most engaging, personal narrative. I'm sure a lot of you actually already do this in some form or another, just not have a word for it. So if you do already do this, be sure to mention down in the comments down below and let me know what that looks like for you. Now, if you don't want to go into the trouble of the whole magic if process, there are 2 very easy hacks. The first is if you write in 3rd person, like I currently do. If you're having trouble with a particular passage, switch over to 1st person for a moment. I have found that for a lot of people, it tricks the mind for a moment and forces you to think about the story in a different way, a subtle yet drastically different way. Simply by switching it up a little bit and using the word I, your mind is almost forced into thinking of it in the lens of the events of the story happening to you for a moment. It's almost identical to using the magic if, but this is on a more subconscious level. And rather than just blurting out the words on the page, he heard or she felt, you'll likely feel a little bit more resistance, a little bit more of a call to just pause for a second and think about it. It's easy to ignore this instinct, particularly if you already write in first person, and if you just breeze on by it, you'll never know it was there. But when you do this intentionally, you'll think about it in a whole new light. The second easy hack is another personal favorite of mine, and it's by using the book The Emotion Thesaurus. If self-immersion is too exhausting, or you don't have time, or you couldn't imagine yourself in a particular scenario, this book is great on taking situations and describing human reactions to them in a very personal way that you can't help but envision. It goes into some detail in explaining what goes through a person's mind and body when they feel a certain way. If you do not already have this in your writing arsenal, I highly recommend picking up a copy. So that is going to wrap things up on show versus tell, but don't go anywhere. It is time to announce the winner of the giveaway that I announced a couple weeks ago, one of the first 10 people to subscribe to my newsletter and win a signed copy of my first book, The Light Thief. So, drum roll please. The winner of this week's giveaway is Veronica. Now, judging by YouTube comments, I think I know who this Veronica is, so congratulations. I'll be reaching out to you via email for your address so I can get this book right out to you. Last but not least, guys, I thought I would share with you my excitement on getting the proof copy of my fourth book, Uprising, due to release on Amazon on January 26th. The cover and summary on back are now both publicly released on Amazon, so go and check it out. And don't tell anyone, but when the fourth book releases, there may or may not be a deal on the first 3 books, so stay tuned. And finally, that is going to do it for me today. My name is David Webb. Thank you again for joining me, and get some writing done.